Let's start with the WHO. I wasn't aware of that.
Right.
At the same time, just reading it now, it does look like a very revolutionary, if I may, and landmark. I speak to that as first as an academic,
Right.
as somebody that looking at this from an academic standpoint. What does this mean?
It basically means, I think I have to correct one of your, it says that it's a diagnostic, it's actually ICD-10, it's an international classification of diseases, which was revised, I think 20 years ago or 40 years ago. I think the earliest was in 1992. One of the landmarks was that it removed homosexuality since 1992 as a disorder, as a mental disorder. And then now, this is another landmark because they are actually removing gender identity disorder, which is normally associated with being transgender. They're moving it from a mental disorder to a more sexual health category or chapter. And the implications of these is that obviously for academics in teaching, in the teaching of psychology, in the teaching of mental health, in the teaching of medical practitioners in that field, would be tremendous. I think, well, of course, it won't be overnight. It will take around 3 years. It will take effect by January 2022. And so there are more, movements to have governments from the World Health Organizations who are state partners or state parties to actually adopt this new classification and reconfigure a lot of their policies in national governments.
But bottom line for us, diba? I mean, WHO is so far removed from our lives. And you get
we
very
might,
no,
we
I
might,
mean for us.
yeah,
I mean, I'm
that's
just saying.
not accurate,
No.
because,
I'm talking about just
yeah.
this. I'm just trying to now. One significant thing why we're doing this episode also is because the reality for all of us is beyond the academic view of this. Our society really does largely proceed from this mistaken notion. I mean, down to the level of families, down to the societies that we move in. It really is the basic premise to the basic challenge and difficulties that the LGBT community deals with.
Yeah. The Philippines is one of the pioneer members of the United Nations. So the Philippines also sits in the World Health Association, or the WHO, which is the governing body of the World Health Organization. So I don't think that this development will not affect the daily lives of people in the Philippines in particular, because whatever the WHO says, the DOH has to comply with it. And so in the Philippines, the Department of Health is answerable to the World Health Organization. But in the case of the reclassification of being trans in the ICD-11, we welcome it as a good development in the fight for trans rights and in the fight against the stigmatization of trans identities. But for me, it doesn't go far enough. Because as Ver mentioned earlier, in 1992, homosexuality was the one listed in the ICD as a mental disorder.
Okay.
When they dropped it from the ICD, it was replaced by another diagnosis for trans people. So before 1992, trans people were not crazy. It was the gay people who were crazy, at least in the eyes of the World Health Organization. But when they removed homosexuality as a mental disorder, it was replaced by transsexualism in the ICD-10. Now they're moving transsexualism and actually changing the diagnosis to gender incongruence from a mental disorder to a sexual health issue. That is okay because at least the WHO as a body that governs the world is saying that trans people are not crazy. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them in their heads, after all. But there's something about their sexuality that makes them so. For me, it's still stigmatizing for a diagnosis to remain in the ICD-11.
Yes.
And so our end goal really is to delist it, like what happened to homosexuality in 1992. So while it is a welcome move for people to understand trans people as not mentally disordered, it doesn't go far enough.